Episode 47. Here we go, Blaine Birch. It is episode 47 of Nobody Told Me with Mike and Blaine. And today we're going to talk about how big ideas always start from small ideas. So Blaine Birch, how you doing, buddy? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking. This is probably where the small idea came from. We probably started with a beer and ended up with a podcast. But okay, so what I got going today? It's a very cool can. It's Shimmer Dry Hop Sour. I usually don't do sours because then my wife loves a sour, so I didn't want to drink all of her sours. But I wanted to do this brewery. This is a Twin Sails Brewery, and it was right before the pandemic. In the summer, probably within like a week or two of where we are now, we were in Port Moody, BC, which is just east of Vancouver. Absolutely loved it. And that's where Twin Sails is. There's a couple other really cool breweries there, but this place just is like a throwback in time. They got a beach there on the inlet. They got fish and chips. They got an ice cream shop, and they got breweries. And so I love that place. So I wanted to feature Twin Sails today. What do you got going on?
And that is such a cool can. You always pick the coolest. It's like an art. It must be your creative design thing, right? Your eye.
I do get attracted to nice cans, and then I when I see ugly cans, I have to overcome the ugly can, knowing that it might be a good beer.
I picked AquaBrew, which is right up the road, San Marcos, Texas, home of Texas State University. Yep. And I went, all right, it's been over 100 degrees for probably 70 days in a row. I know it's not been 70 days, so but I wanted something kind of light, kind of fruity. So I went with this Ape-pricot, right? Ape-pricot is Ape-pricot. So, but look at the guy, right? He's just kind of hanging out. He's, I guess an ape, since they call it Ape-pricot, hanging out. Just
hanging out and chilling, having a beer. That's a good.
Having a beer, just hanging out.
Cool can, man.
Yeah, it is a cool can. So I'm real excited about this one. So because I don't know, I had just wanted something kind of light, something kind of fruity. So we're going to try this. Plus it's local. Plus it's pretty local.
Nice, good stuff. Yeah, I ventured one province over, but I feel like I'm running out. I'm gonna have to start looking for more locals and more Alberta breweries because I'm starting to run low on them, and I'll have to go wider afield here, I think, pretty soon. So small ideas turning into big ideas.
Yeah, that's right. So, but I tell you, I mean, I think our sponsor, right? So we're doing this live. You and I did something. We've been doing it live on YouTube. Haven't had great results. So we took a link and we posted it on our Facebook pages, thinking maybe somebody would click on it and watch it. So we'll see if it happens or not. But we are sponsored. If you are watching it, if you are checking this out, we're sponsored by Blaine Birch's company. It's called Dry Run. It is probably for a mid-size. Aren't you kind of the mid-size? For
more mid-size businesses, yeah.
Mid-size businesses, one of the best cash flow forecasting tools on the market. So I encourage you to go check him out. And Blaine, a little quick blurb. Want to give a little jab?
Yeah, check us out. Especially right now, companies are all concerned about their cash flow, all building financial models to figure out where they're going, what their sales are looking like. And we do, that's what we do. We help you do that. If you're a CPA or CFO, you're advising some of your clients, generally businesses that are over $1 million a year revenue and up. That's where we can really help. So come check us out at dryrun.com.
All right. Thank you, Blaine. I'll tell you what, what's funny? Today we're talking about how big ideas always come from small ideas. And you probably just did it off the cuff and didn't even realize what you'd said. But man, I'm like going, that struck me as soon as you said it, which was this started out as a beer and turned into a podcast.
Turned into a podcast, right? Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, we like talking to each other. Maybe other people would like to hear us talk.
That's exactly it. Suddenly this little idea and like, man, now we got merch on our website and we got, lots of downloads live. I don't know if anyone's listening to live. They seem to like to download us instead. But little idea is starting to turn into a much bigger one. I'm going to take a quick look and see if anyone's actually watching us. I don't know if anyone is yet or not live. They'll all download us later and, listen on their commute.
There you go. So, but that's exactly right, though. It started out as just, hey, let's do this. It might be fun. Then it turned into a website. Then it turned into, hey, let's put a logo up there. Let's sell some t-shirts. Let's have people buy us beers. Let's go live with it. I mean, that's exactly how these things evolve. It starts out as something small, and just naturally businesses tend to evolve. It's one small win after another. It's just like going, yeah, let's try that. Let's try this. So I wanted to talk about that, how, even the biggest companies like Apple didn't start out that way, right? It started out as one small win after another.
Yeah, one small, it's not just the idea, it's one small problem a lot of times that they're fixing, and it starts to balloon. And we just had a little blurb about dry run, and then, I'm not here to sort of plug it every minute, but just to talk a little bit about how that idea came to be. And it really started with around 2008, 2009, when the recession hit. And I pulled out a spreadsheet because I had to figure out, like, we had just expanded, and, we had got a much bigger office, and this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden contracts are starting to slam shut. So pull out a spreadsheet, and it's one step going, I got to figure out our cash flow. Then I got to figure out our sales pipeline. Then I got to figure out how we're going to overcome this, how we're going to grow, how we're going, all these questions came up. That idea led to the first idea of dry run, which also started small and now is a much different thing. And so it's this little problem and this little idea that when I look back now, I'm like, man, that first spreadsheet was a little seed that has now grown into this software.
Yeah, see, I like that word seed for it, because to me, all the best ideas, the biggest ideas that I've come up with, all started with, and I'm just going to try to pare it down to two words, which is like, what if? Like, what if we looked at this differently? What if this isn't the way we were looking at it? What if we have to keep track of this? What if, you know what I mean? To me, those are the two words that spark that innovation, that growth, that seed, right? So, and I read something, I don't know, I'm going to say it's about 2 or 3 months ago, that the iPhone was really a product of that question. And here's what it was. There was an Apple engineer sitting there, I guess we're going to say Cupertino. Is that how you say it? Wherever they're located. And he's holding his iPod and goes, what if we could make calls with this?
Yeah.
It was just that. It was that question of him, listening to his iPod and says, I wonder if we can make a telephone call with this. That changed the world, into now what I consider to be probably the most popular phone in the world, being the Apple iPhone.
Yeah, it generated an entire industry. There's not a whole lot of phones that aren't dumb phones, that aren't smartphones. There's not a whole lot of them anymore. And when it first came out, people were like, oh my, who would pay that? That was one of the famous quotes. No one would pay $1,000 for a telephone. Well, yeah, they are, because it's literally have a computer in your pocket. And when you look at how even that little idea of it's kind of an iPod with a phone built in, well, look where it's gone now with all the software, and you can basically run your business off the phone, and you can make payments with your phone, and you can board an airplane with your phone. It's evolved into this magic device that really started out as just a small idea and has turned into a groundbreaking one.
Well, and even that even spawned a whole ecosystem of applications, the App Store. I mean, all these people saying, well, now that I have this device in my hand, what else can I do with it, right? And you can look back through the history of man, and we've always tried to find a more efficient way to just do one thing that sparked another, from the wheel to the automobile. Right? Yeah, exactly. If you look at it that way, from horse-drawn carriages to combustible engines, it's now electrical vehicles. It's an evolution of an idea that happens. So, and I was thinking about it because I brought up Apple. I'm like going right before this podcast, I thought about like McDonald's. When you think about McDonald's as just what it was unimpressive. A couple of guys selling hamburgers in a couple of different locations. And all they were trying to do was make their one little business better. Right. That's it. That's all they were trying to do. How can we do this without bumping into each other? How can we, just make it a simple menu where we can sell very few items, but do it really well? right? And really efficient and faster than anybody else. Instead of waiting for 14 minutes for a burger, you can get it almost instantaneously. That the idea was just, I want to sell a burger faster.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, what if we could do that?
And the amazing part, because it's funny when people say, well, you know, like, was it Ray Kroc, I think was the name, came in and say they took over McDonald's because he bought McDonald's and those guys didn't get anything out of it. But those guys didn't have the vision to take it from something simple to something massive. And so it was a simple idea of making it, like you said, just really efficient. Someone else actually had to recognize it, walked in and said, I can take this and I can use it as, and just like replicate, you know, clone, and take that system and sell that system. And I don't know, I wonder how early on, and sort of, I don't know that much about franchises. I wonder how early McDonald's was as a franchise, or if that was one of the first ones that actually franchised. Actually, I don't even know if McDonald's are franchised or are they owned. I think they are franchised, aren't they?
Yeah, I think most of them are franchised. I don't know if they have any corporate stores anymore, right? I mean, you know, a lot of corporations, with the exception of like Starbucks, right? Starbucks likes to maintain corporate ownership, right? They actually do, and I think for the longest time they only had one franchisee or one licensed store, and that was Magic Johnson. And he took Starbucks into, you know, the areas that were closest to his movie theaters. And, you know, they even had a different menu just because of the food style and preferences were a little different in those areas.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't even know that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't either, but I was at like QuickBooks Connect in San Jose, I'm going to say 5 years ago, and Magic Johnson was a speaker. Okay. And he didn't talk basketball hardly at all. He talked about being able to be, you know, to talk, I think it was Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, into allowing him a few stores to test out an idea that he had. Yeah. Yeah. You know, but that's the same thing. It's the vision of being able to. Can
Your dog is not liking this show.
No, they did. All right. So he's in the room right next to the patio, and I don't know. I guess he's going crazy.
He's not liking something.
Should I put him away for a second?
Yeah, if he starts barking again, you want to run out, and I'll just talk. I'll keep it going. I'll talk about beer. Yeah,
but check that out. It was one of those things where the idea, and I heard a saying a while back, and I think it was General Electric, when they were trying to build these big generators and big turbines and stuff like that, and they were having inefficiencies when they would break down or malfunction. Yeah. So they're like, oh, man, we just cannot track where these things are happening, or it takes too long to identify the problem and then come back and re-identify the problem with the right parts and those type of things. Yeah. And so one of the engineers just took a piece of chalk and would circle on the big engine where the problem was, so he could come back to it, because everything looked the same. Right. Yeah. So he, you know, I guess in these big turbines, there's, you know, the circuit boards and everything else. So he took a piece of chalk and just, you know, circled it so people could find the problem pretty easily after he had found it. Yeah. Well, the saying though was, hey, you know, a piece of chalk and the chalk mark, making the mark, is $1 idea, right? Yeah. But knowing where to market is $1 million idea. Right? So it was one of those things where it was just the smallest. He was just trying to solve a problem that became a whole, you know, a whole process and an efficiency process in General Electric. Yeah. And that is, you know, like you look back, it's like you said, sort of the world's largest businesses and just local successful ones. Even a lot of times they're solving a problem where they started with just like at Nike, it's like, I want to make a better shoe. But were they picturing that it was going to be a multinational brand that covers everything, right? Starbucks is like maybe a better cup of coffee, like a different experience. These are ideas that it's amazing. Like I can't imagine they even envisioned how big some of these ideas can get. Even Amazon originally started selling books. I'm always curious, was it in his long-term plan to sell kind of everything at that point? Or was it just, I think we got an opportunity to sell books online, and started to, you know, nail that down and go, man, we can make this sell anything, you know? And you know, what's funny, he was selling used books out of his garage, right? You know what the big difference was? How he grew faster than, we'll say, barnesandnoble.com, right? Because both selling books, and that's what he went up against, was Amazon.com versus, barnesandnoble.com. The difference was he created an efficiency by going direct to the publisher, where Barnes and Noble had a built-in delay, a built-in middleman. They used distributing warehouses. They used these larger conglomerates, and didn't have that efficiency where he could just go into individual publishers and just buy books from them. Yeah, they had to buy it, in bulk from different, larger middlemen. So that was just his idea. I'm going to make that one process faster.
Yeah. And it's when it first came out, I remember early in the sort of the .com, whatever, it was Amazon sold books. That's just what they were known for. Sold books is just, and then the idea of that, well, that's sort of all they do. And now, not that many years later, you just assume they sell everything. And like I was over at my parents last night, and I had on my new jean jacket, and they asked, well, where'd you get the jean jacket? My dad said, did you get that from Amazon? No, I got it straight from Tanuki in Japan. And then they thought I was, of course, just this massive jean nerd for buying this jacket straight from this one place in Japan. But they just literally assumed, well, you must have gone on Amazon. They never even thought that I would go to a store and buy it. They thought I must have bought it on Amazon, which was bizarre to me that was where they jumped right away. Yeah. And, but then I look at this little independent, jean manufacturer in Japan, and they've got their little e-commerce store, and now you can go direct to them, and everybody has their own little e-commerce store. 20 years ago, you definitely couldn't imagine it. Or 10 years ago, you'd still be like, that would be so expensive and so hard to do. Now Shopify and things like that, it's like, nah, everyone has their own store. We have our own store. We always forget.
That's right. We got our own store. Well, but that's what they've done, is that they really, the core of the business is the same. They say, well, if we can do this with books, we can do this with toothpaste. We can do this with, anything. Yeah. They cut out the distributor, the middleman, who used to take it and put it on Target shelves and everything else. And it says, we'll get it right from the person that manufactures or makes it and give it right to you. Yeah. Right. We put that middle person in it. And so the core of the business, I think, is just an expansion of the original idea, which was not to use distributing warehouses. Yeah. So super cool.
And the more I think about it, I think about Shopify, and I think about it was an idea of, let's just make it easier for just a regular person to sell online. And then you look at it and I went to, because I love to support independent businesses and small business, right? So when I'm in town, I'm restaurants I go to, and coffee shops and beer shops, and I like craft beer and everything else. Now it's starting to extend where the last pair of boots I bought were from like Canada West. It's like a little Canadian high-end like boot manufacturer that make boots. And my jeans I bought are Turo, Japanese denim as well, but it's in Edmonton. They're literally an Edmonton company making jeans on this one little shop in 124th. And then I order a jean jacket from overseas, and now I get to support even my coffee. My last thing, I ordered 2 big giant 5 or 2 pound bags of coffee from Laker Coffee. Like, I can now go and support little independent businesses across the entire globe because I want to support them rather than the big, megalith business, right?
Yeah. Well, cash flow tool was an evolution of the idea of, we don't like the dashboard, right? That's all they were trying to do, or I guess I was trying to do, was change the way people looked at a dashboard, when it came to cash flow and stuff like that, which was, we had Finagraph, the original, it's just a dashboard, which really, if you characterize it, it's just a wall of numbers. And we got a lot of feedback of, man, that's just too many numbers. It's too much. We glaze over. Like, how do we make it more interesting? So, James Walter really threw me and another guy from the product team in a conference room and says, don't come out until you've reimagined a dashboard. Yeah. and out came, cash flow tool out of the thing. So, but it's just one of those things that said, okay, we have this problem. I need to solve it. But the way we were solving it was, what if we could show, and it wasn't the graphs and all that. Originally, it was just a cash flow calendar, which was, what if we could just show you a heat map of when we think you're going to have money or not based on the number of days. That's all we were trying to do. And it evolved into way much more, right? You just keep adding little things that kind of help the product. And I'm sure you know that right at Dry Run, you probably add little features all the time.
All the time. Like I look back to the very first prototype I made, with a little static prototype, and it was literally, you could enter a few manual figures, and the idea was you had scenario A and scenario B. It's like, what if, here's the first one. What if I get paid late? And you know what? The fundamentals of Dry Run, the structure is kind of still the same. Like it's really easy to use. And it's about like, what if this happens? The difference is we'll connect to like a big ERP system and pull in millions of dollars worth of data and transactions and do all sorts of fancy stuff. And then in the end, it's still, well, what if this happens? What if we have to do this or that? It's like gone from a really nice pedal bike to a helicopter, but it's fundamentally, it's still moving people around. Like it's doing the same thing. Right. And it's amazing. I can't even believe almost when I look back with this simple idea of, I just want to solve this problem, and how I pictured it to where the product is now, but even where the business is now is initially it's like, oh, maybe I can sell a few of these and make a few bucks. Right. And now it's like, it's a totally different thing, right? You got a whole team and a bunch of mouths to feed sort of thing. Right.
Well, and sometimes it happens on accident, right? Meaning my first company, janitorial company, morphed into a hotel staffing company just off of a question a customer asked. Can I just buy your people? Can I just get your people for an hour and you don't have to go do the work. You don't have to clean it. You don't have to buy the chemicals. I just need people. I don't need the whole service.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, shit, that's a good idea.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing is, that's the other thing is some of these ideas, they're not even yours. It's the entrepreneur that that recognizes the opportunity and executes on it. And that's amazing. But that's a really common thing that you like, and we've done that so many times. Like we started as a small business product, and then, I thought accountants would laugh at us. And then all of a sudden there's accountants knocking on our door. Yeah, we really need this. And it'd be good if you could do this and you could do that. And like, okay, like keep on telling us, like, we don't have to figure it out then.
Well, I mean, it's like, there's big things that have been, invented that way. Penicillin was an accident, and it was somebody goes, oh, we should look at this a little bit more, see what it does. Yeah. And all of a sudden it's used to treat infection, and the microwave, right? When did some guy goofing around with just some waves and it popped a piece of popcorn on his desk?
I think it melted a chocolate bar or something, but yeah, something like that. Velcro, I think I can't even remember what the thing was with Velcro, but it seemed to me it was a bit of an accident. I might be wrong on that one, but some interesting story too, right?
Well, what's interesting about like Velcro and all that? 3M started out as a mining company.
Really? I didn't know that. Yeah, I can't even figure out how they make that transition.
It was like Minnesota Mining and Metals or Mining and Materials or something like that was the original one. And I'm not sure what happened there, but there was an accident where they discovered an adhesive that they could peel away as well, or some type of adhesive. And it was the same thing with the Post-it notes came out of that idea as well.
Yeah.
Just an accident, like, oh, you're screwing around with something and comes up with this adhesive that changes the world.
That's it's amazing. And again, like just recognizing the opportunity and saying, we're going that way, right? Like that's where we're going. And like even think of Netflix, like they started out as, I just don't want to go to the video store. We're just going to mail the discs to you. Right. That seemed like such a simple idea that basically invented streaming in a lot of ways. I don't know if it invented it, but like commercialized it and made it work, made it viable. And suddenly everyone's falling in behind. Right.
What's funny about like Netflix? I think I won't say this, but at least they're the first ones I remember doing it in my lifetime that leveraged the post office as a warehouse, as a distribution point. And now Amazon does as well, right? But Netflix, I went into the post office in a small town, and I could see their bundles of all of the discs that they never left that. They just went to the post office and back out. They never had to go to another distribution point to be repackaged and come. They had some type of contract with the post office to take one out. Oh, that's a Die Hard, and they put it in the next whoever has the next order. Yeah, yeah.
That's
and now
unbelievable.
Amazon, yeah, now Amazon has those contracts with the post office to even deliver on a Sunday. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was a kid, post office did not come out on, is it Saturday or Sunday? At least Sunday. They didn't come out on Sunday. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think they added Saturday service somewhere in my lifetime.
Yeah. I always found I find that strange. We don't have Saturday, Sunday on for Canada Post up here in Canada. And I always found it like weird going down the States. I'm like, that's the mailman. It's Saturday. What is on Sunday? What? But you always see the Amazon truck, and you always see like UPS. Everybody else seems to be going, and independent couriers and that they're just going all the time, right? Like it's amazing that it's you start looking back at all of these ideas of Amazon. You got the trucks, and also it's like, well, UPS, and then you start thinking, well, Uber Eats and all these things that,
yeah,
like Uber Eats, they already had Uber, and then they must have just come up with an idea like, man, what if instead of bringing a person, we brought your food? And I used to hear stories about especially during the big oil boom 15 20 years ago here in Alberta. You'd always hear these stories of guys up in Fort Mac. They get back from work, they done a long day, and they would just send the cabbie to go, like, can you go pick up my dinner, or pick up a pack of smokes or whatever it was. You always heard those stories. And it was like, that's kind of the precursor to Uber Eats, but it was a really expensive way to get your lunch delivered, I think.
Well, yeah, but I think COVID changed that whole thing, because then people started creating these pop-up kitchens. I don't think I don't remember, maybe it's a cloud kitchen, but think about a warehouse that's set up like a trade show floor. And it's all these local kitchens then came into this warehouse, and they would cook their signature food inside these booths. I'm gonna call them a booth.
Yeah.
And the Uber Eats people and all that would just come by and Grubhub to one central location, but have 10 or 20 different restaurants inside one warehouse and pick it up and go. Right.
Yeah.
Another extension of that. Right. So, I mean, when you couldn't open a restaurant, I could send two guys down to this place. Right? Yeah. To just cook and fill to-go orders.
Yeah. It's amazing how that we never saw that before, where there was some virtual restaurant somewhere that you're like, well, I don't know. And even on Uber Eats now, you can get delivered from food trucks. Like the food truck was the ultimate, you had to go to that neighborhood, or you had to go find the truck, and you had to track it down and go and find the food there. And now it's like, you can literally have your food delivered from the food truck. Feels like such a bizarre thing to me. Right. But it's great.
So what do you think of that? I've tried to think about the economics of a food truck, and I can't make it work. I know you got to be in the right location all the time, Russ. You've got a lot of wasted money.
Yeah, I think everything must be so heavy on location, and then I imagine social media helps a ton, because they can broadcast that location and make sure that people know where they are. But there's a few places, like there's a place in town here in Edmonton where there was kind of an empty lot, and they've turned it into, and I don't know, like, it's quite organized. I don't really know who organized it or whatever, but they've made this lot into like this little food truck central. So there's always 3, 4, whatever food trucks on this lot. And that's just sort of, where you can go. And so it's almost like their backup secondary place. They can always maybe go there. There's a couple, like there's a dog park near us, and we bike by it all the time. Always food trucks, but it's the same 2 or 3. So they're always down there. And so you start to get like a set location.
What's funny is that we stumbled across an area called the District. It's probably 10-15 miles from the house here, out in the middle of the country. I mean, it's just a road that you use to get between Spring Branch, Texas, and New Braunfels, Texas, right? It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But they call it the District. I'll call it the District. This district has popped up out there, whereas they've got this thing called the Treehouse Tavern, and it's built like a treehouse almost, but super cool, super modern, super contemporary. Yeah. Dog park, golf simulator business, several little shops. But then in the back of it, is this food court of food trucks. Think about
Oh, interesting.
8 or 10 of them in a U that probably are just permanent fixtures there. But rather than building full restaurants, they just built, just brought in food trucks, and they just sell all kinds of different food from behind this treehouse bar back there.
Yeah.
Super cool area.
It's amazing that they made a destination. Like and there's enough there to build a destination. In that case, I think the food truck works because the destination is come to the bar, the dog park, the little shops, grab you a pizza or a taco or a burger or chicken sandwich or whatever that. I can see it working there. Mobile ones, I don't see it. Well, and they're like the beer, the Blind Pig in Scottsdale that you walk by and saw that they had the little beer place there. They would have a food truck there. I don't know if it's once a month or a couple times a month, but they would have a food truck, and they would broadcast it on all of their, Instagram and Facebook, and people started to know the food truck's going to be there tonight. I wonder which food truck. And so I think that's the other way food trucks do it, is they partner with places like that don't necessarily have the food, but they have the audience and they can broadcast to that audience. But you must be trying to build those partnerships constantly so that you have some sort of the regulars. That's what you're looking for. It's kind of like the restaurant regulars when you're mobile. It's a hard thing to build, I would think.
Well, what's funny is another idea for that, and I'm just saying that because I visited a food truck Saturday. Our neighborhood, and it's really 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like 5 neighborhoods in one. It's called Kinder Ranch, but Kinder Ranch can consist of, we'll say, 1,000 homes, because it's Hastings Ridge and Sunday Creek and Prospect Creek and Settlers Ridge. So it's all these. But I'm going to say Saturday, now that I already said Saturday, every Saturday they'll bring out 2 food trucks. One serves margaritas, the other one serves a food.
Nice.
So,
nice.
And they post up by the pool, right? So at the community pool. So they'll be in the parking lot up there, and you can just go up there, and they're only there from like 4 to 9 or 5 to 9 or something like that. So it's a short amount of time. It's a targeted location. There's not a lot of restaurants out here because it's a new subdivision area.
Yeah.
I could see that working. If you did it once a week, had that, you were the only choice, right? Only choice in the neighborhood.
I think that's the successful ones must have figured that out, and they have their schedule, and they figured out those partnerships. And it's interesting talking about sort of how the small ideas can grow into this big idea. And there's a brewery in Edmonton, a Blind Enthusiasm, and when they kind of just sort of popped up on the scene, they built sort of this building with Bira, which is it's sort of part of that Blind Enthusiasm, but it's a restaurant. And then they didn't just do that. They had this beautiful contemporary building, and now there's a coffee shop in there, a cafe, and a butcher, and I think like some other little shop or something. And it's amazing. But it was in this old neighborhood that there was a couple kind of strip malls, not much going on. Over the last 5 years, they sort of dropped this in, and now the strip mall across the street completely renoed. I don't even remember what was in there, but now they got a little ice cream shop and a bunch of other stuff, and this really long strip mall right down beside them. Hadn't probably been renoed since the 80s, suddenly completely renoed, all, so much new stuff in there. And this one idea of, I'm going to start a brewery and maybe we'll throw in a restaurant, and why don't we just add a few more things into the building, has completely changed the neighborhood. And what's really interesting is now other breweries have started to pop up, and now they've got one of 2 or 3 little districts in Edmonton where there's like 7 or 8 breweries in this area. And this kind of started a little bit as this anchor. Really interesting how it grew like that.
Yeah, see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And when you were talking about it, I've got an idea, right? So whoever's listening to this, here's a business idea for you. And it comes out, I'm going to combine 2 things. All right. So, there's shipping containers, right? Like they come in, people ship from China or Panama or wherever it is. Yeah. Well, there's a such business that when those are emptied and they have to be moved somewhere else to be filled, right? Maybe they come into LA or come into to Galveston or Houston. then maybe they're moved somewhere else to get filled by, I don't know, up in Austin to, we'll say Amazon or Tesla or somebody wants to put something in these.
Yeah.
There's a business that actually sells that trip. So the container's never quite empty. They say, oh, you want to move stuff from Houston to Austin? I got 2 containers going that way. They'll throw stuff in there.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So there's never a wasted piece of mileage with an empty shipping container while it's going from one big haul to the next.
Yeah.
You could form a food truck brokerage where your whole job is to just market. I have, if you need a food truck, come here. It's like, foodtruck.com, right? You go out there. It probably has that already, but you sell this across the nation, and all the food trucks sign on to your service. And what you are is matching, neighborhoods like this. So because right now you got to call, it's so sporadic. There's too many people you have to call to figure out a food truck to come out.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool to have one place I can go and go, oh, well, I want Mexican, or I want, Asian food, and I want noodles, and I want tacos, and I want pizza.
Yeah. Well, or even this is like, yeah, I want that. Well, those guys are all busy. Well, what's next? Yeah, we've got, these ones are free. They're ready to be booked that night. They're, I know my
That's a whole calendar for the community. The whole calendar saying, here's what we have available on these days.
Yeah.
Who do you want?
I know my, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it makes it a lot more coordinated and it gives you a central place to go. Otherwise you'll never know where to go. Right. Like, 2 of my nieces are working at a radio station this summer, and they just have this fancy little like Nissan something or other with all these decals and stuff on. And their job is to drive around and give away popsicles. And apparently if you have an event or a soccer game or this or that or the other, you can go to social media and say, hey, come over, kind of like a food truck, come over to here. I don't know if there's that great of a way to kind of book them. But that's their job, is just to drive around town and make people love the radio station by going and giving away popsicles. And one time they had extra popsicles at the end of the shift. And I don't know if I'm supposed to mention this, but we got a couple of popsicles that, we were, non-event popsicles.
That's funny. Oh, look at that shit. People have already taken those. I can get findafoodtruck.org.
So your idea has probably been done 50 times already.
Yeah, probably. It's already, I mean, nobody's done it well because you've never heard of it.
Yeah, that's true. Although I've never actually been looking for a food truck. Maybe if I was, I would stumble across that. I don't know.
Yeah, probably so. But foodtruck.com is for sale for $250,000. So somebody has the great name. Somebody has a great name. Yeah. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to make it work. Because you can make more than $250,000 with that one.
Yeah, you could, but there's a hell of a lot of execution between that idea, that domain name. It's like pets.com. I think they thought we're going to rule the world because we had a great domain name. But then Amazon was selling books, and now it's the de facto. So it's amazing.
Yeah. We tried to buy cashflow.com at Finnegraph, and I think the guy wanted $1 million for it. Really, $1 million for that?
No.
So we here's what we did. We bought cashflowtool.com and then everything around Cashflow. Right? We bought as much as we could around Cashflow that made cashflow.com almost worthless.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Like a lot of times the ones that are, it's very distinctive names that have, or just the ones that were available. Right. There's one side where you have the word and people are familiar with it, but the other one is where you build it. You build the brand around it, and you give meaning to the word too. So it's which seems like it'd be a harder one, but yeah, it's what most people do, I guess.
I mean, what? That's the classic Google, or what's another one? Uber, kind of. I mean, Uber was more of a description of size before it was a rideshare service to me.
Yeah.
That's Uber big, or that's Uber, cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't even use it that much. I think is it German origin? Uber?
Sounds like it could be German. I should know, but I don't really.
Anyway, but yes, I mean, but did you see that show, The Battle for Uber?
No.
Yeah, watch it. Right, it's about him starting it up and all the challenges that the CEO Travis went through.
Okay.
With not only his investors in the board, but with the unions, the cabs, the city councils, everybody else around that was trying to keep him from expanding it. And the original name was Uber Cab or something like that. I think it was like Uber Cab or.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it might have been something even before that. And then it became Uber. They just dropped the cab off of it because by dropping the cab off of it, they avoided some of the city council rules. And I'll say New York or LA, because we're not a cab, we're just a ride sharing service. And that's where ride sharing come up. It was like a cab before. They were going to go head to head, but they didn't want to play by the same rules as the cab companies.
And it's amazing
that was another small idea. I don't want to wait that long for a cab.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly people sort of acclimatize to that, and to Airbnb as well, right? And like I remember going to not that many years ago either. I went to Vancouver and I popped open Uber, and that's when I found out they hadn't licensed Uber yet or Lyft. And I felt completely lost. Like, how the hell do we get around? Like we were, and we actually had a car there too. And I'm like, I don't want to drive and park this thing. I just want to hop in an Uber. Like, do we grab a cab? And I couldn't even face getting a cab. So we're like, no, I'll just use the train. We'll walk. But I couldn't believe, like, over just a few years there, I got so acclimatized to it that I felt completely lost. Because almost everywhere I go, as soon as I get off the plane, you're on Uber, right? Like you're on Lyft, going, okay, well, let's go to the hotel.
What's funny is Austin was like that for a long time because they required fingerprints for ride sharing services, and Uber refused to do it. So they wouldn't let Uber in. So these weird little ones popped up, but the good thing that the little ones did was they put stickers and promotions and stuff everywhere at the airport and everything like that about how to get in touch with them, QR codes, download the app. Here's how so they educated very well.
Yeah.
But I think eventually they died.
Once Uber walks in.
Yeah. Eventually they died. But you said Airbnb, you've heard their origin story, right?
I probably have, but I don't remember.
All right, so one of the largest conferences in San Francisco, right? Okay. I don't know, megaconference.com. I don't know what it is, but whichever one it is, people couldn't find rooms. And if they found rooms, they were like $1,500 a night or something like that. So they said, well, what if we just, and I think they started off on like Craigslist or, something like that. Two guys had a small little apartment, right? It's like, I don't even know how many bedrooms it was, if any. And all they did was advertise air mattresses in their apartment for a couple $100 or something like that. So if you wanted to come to the conference, and you didn't have a lot of money to spend for $1,500 a night in a hotel room, maybe you'd sleep, pay $200 for an air mattress in an apartment in the area that the conference was going on.
Oh, that's amazing. I don't think I've ever heard that story before.
Yeah. So it's just a crazy, origin story of just two guys that says, we'll just sell air mattresses in our apartment because we're right here.
Yeah, right next to, what is it called in downtown San Francisco? It starts with M, I think. The big
market.
Well, it's a big conference center right there, and but you're right. Like the hotel next door, I bet you is like $1,000 a night, or like $1,500 a night to try and stay there during a conference, which would just be brutal, right?
And so they rented it out, and so their friends go, well, we want to do that too, and then boom.
Man, amazing.
Just regular people renting out beds, Yeah.
That's almost the ultimate small idea becomes something big. Like it really is, because it's like they weren't even thinking about a business. It's like it's almost like we're gonna have a garage sale and then building like Shopify out of that. Like it's just huge. It's amazing.
Yeah, you should read up on that stuff. I'm like, I always find that's how you know I'm a geek, right? You know, I'm nerd out on that stuff. I'm like, how did they get to that point? What was the idea that got to that point?
Yeah,
And
I'm such a junkie of and I, here I'm gonna boost another podcast. How I built this with Guy Raz. I cannot get enough of that one. And it's all these stories just like that of how these amazingly massive businesses, how they got started. And it's so incredible to hear, because you just from the outside, you always think these multi-billion, trillion-dollar businesses are it almost seems like, oh, they started that way. And then you find out it's just like how they had to go through all the battles that every entrepreneur has to go through, but somehow they found their way to something huge.
yeah, you know what I saw the other day, and to me, this is an extension of the healthcare system that did not exist in my mind a year ago, and it probably did, and I just didn't know. A mobile IV service. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, no, interesting though. It makes sense, especially during COVID, right?
But think of what I saw pull up was like just a regular person in a car would go into somebody's house and give them an IV.
The Uber sticker on the window. It's like, oh, I got a few minutes here. Let's jab a guy in the arm. And
IV stickers to the Uber and say IV.
yeah, exactly. Flip on the other light. I got a couple minutes here.
But yeah, I mean, and they just ordered it online. Just I'm feeling a little ill. Maybe an IV will help. And first of all, I wouldn't even know if I needed an IV. An IV. I wouldn't know. I can self-diagnose like that, but some people can.
Yeah,
and
they must. I don't know. There must be like, yeah, I don't know how that works, but amazing. I couldn't even imagine something like that. Like I don't know if this would be a little idea that I think is going to be huge or could be huge, but this sort of in that healthcare area that I heard of Mark Cuban getting involved in this business that is selling prescription drugs for like 15% above market. Like that's it. It's like we're giving a small markup. That's the price. And I think that's amazing. And it's so that could completely upend the industry. It could force regular pricing, like reasonable pricing, which I find amazing. Right.
Well, it absolutely amazing, but it took somebody like him to be able to get that off the ground.
Yeah, because I think anybody else would be pushed out of business. And he was the guy that I think could say, yeah, come at me. Because he's actually big enough to withstand all of these pharma companies. And it's sad that it takes that much, but in that case, that's probably what it takes, is someone with that much backbone and that much capital to be able to go, yeah, you know what? Too bad.
Well, I mean, if you recall, the thing that scared me, right? Where am I going? Somebody needs to step up against this. One of the social media networks, I forget what it's called. It's the one that got in trouble.
That's probably a long list by now.
Starts with a P. Parlor. All right, it's called Parlor, right? So Parlor came up to give a conservative voice to people that wanted to have it. But here, and I never got on Parlor. I don't know anything about it. But here's what scared me about what happened to them, is that they would allow people to say anything. So Facebook, Apple, Amazon, they didn't like that.
Yeah.
So the first thing they did is to get kicked off of Apple Store, right? So you can't download the app.
Yeah.
Then they get kicked off Google Play Store, so you can't download the app. Then all of their services are on AWS, and they get kicked off of that too. So all of a sudden, there's nowhere for them to turn. They have to build their own, servers, right? It's AWS, and then how do you distribute it if it's not through? You can't download it on your phone.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, oh man, that's three companies right there that could kill any company they want to in the world.
Anybody they want.
And
it's
at least a tech company. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is like those things are there's something you sort of don't think about. Like we're always worried about security and hackers and things like that. You don't think about just sort of, do you suddenly somehow become offside with the companies that you rely on to run your company, right? And it's that's a really strange thing in a really strange area. And I'm like, those things worry me too. And it has nothing to do with the actual like product or service. But where it starts to get a little sketchy to me as well, is it legal? Because if it's legal, should they be able to shut down a business? Whether I agree with it or not, that's my personal opinion. What do I have to say about it? Versus if it's illegal, yeah, I totally get it. Completely different. But when it's something legal, that's a whole area where it's worrying, because it's like, well, when would someone decide that, our company is not, I don't know, they don't want people to know their finances. I don't know. With our company, it's probably not the best example, but it is kind of a weird area there where it's like, man, you could literally kill a business. Are they doing something that's legal? Like I said, whether I like it or not, it's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, I just know what happened. So I'm like going, legal or not, Parlor didn't have the amount of money it took. They would need somebody to help them, challenge it. They need somebody to step in. And I guess that's government's role to challenge it.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you really come down to think about it, is to defend the defenseless.
Yeah. But, like I'll be like, as soon as you say it's government's role, and I'm like, those guys, like, and I'm talking all of them, left, right, middle, everything else. Like, that's their responsibility. Those guys, I'm not so sure that's a great plan, unfortunately.
Hey, so here's something I learned from you today, right? You mentioned, buying the jacket, the denim jacket.
Should have wore it. I think I wore it last week.
And I didn't think about, and then you talked about the food trucks or the breweries and all that starting to create their own district. The ecosystem that happens from the smallest of idea, the smallest movement in the world, right? It's, if you've ever heard of string theory, that's what they talk about, the vibrations of strings that cause other things to happen, butterfly effect or whatever. But
yeah,
if you don't think about it that way, it doesn't, you don't get it. But when you mentioned it, man, that's really true. Is that the smallest idea that I have might be way bigger than me, and I not even know it.
Yeah, you may not know it. You may never know it, or you may be looking back after years and going, I didn't see this coming. And it potentially in a good way, right? Then it's I find that so amazing that like that anchor area there. The other thing I really love is they're all small independent shops, and they're everywhere, and they've built up a district, and that district of all these small independent shops that would normally struggle against the big brands or the big chains. It's like a magnet that can draw people in, and it becomes this cool area that I don't think the big brands could ever match.
It's funny that there is an actual business theory concept around that. It's called a cluster theory. Have you ever heard of that?
Okay.
Cluster.
No.
All right. So in Canada, I don't know if it's true. It is true in the United States, where in town, if you want to buy a car, generally you can go to a certain area and there might be 4, 5, 6 car dealerships or more in the same area, right? Yeah. The same thing true with fast food joints, right? You see
restaurants, I've seen it. Yeah.
Lowe's, Home Depot, kind of in the similar area, so you can kind of compare shop. Well, bar districts the same way. The cluster theory is said to protect businesses, just like you said, because you become a destination and people come to that area for a specific activity or good or service or otherwise.
Yeah.
And you can really benefit with little or no marketing, because you're gathering in. All you got to do is be better than the person next to you.
Yeah.
People are coming there for that reason. So the cluster theory is designed to help businesses be successful because people are coming to that area for that service.
Yeah, I hadn't heard the term before, but I know, and I can just sort of relate it, especially to restaurants, where I've heard that before, where restaurants, you're likely to be much more successful when you're in kind of a grouping, because people will come to the area. And the riskiest restaurants, a little bit counterintuitive, are the ones that are often like off on their own. It's like the little wildebeest that got away from the entire herd and they're off on their own, unless they have something that there's some way that they have this terrific draw, or they're unique. So they become a destination in themselves, because it's like the only kind of seafood place or whatever in the area.
Yeah.
we went to a new Mexican place on the weekend. We were riding our bikes and we went, we did a little pub crawl and I had to get some food in between the little breweries that we're going to on our bikes. And I looked online and here's this new Mexican place. And so we rode out there and I'm like, there's nothing around it. It's all commercial. Everything's like commercial and like kind of warehousey district and stuff. And except for these guys in kind of this brand new sort of fanciest commercial space. I wouldn't even call it a strip mall. It's commercial. And then they got this restaurant in there. And I think, well, at least they can draw from the area, but they're kind of on their own out there, which is, it was a little weird, but hopefully they do really well out there.
Hey, speaking on their own out there, nobody told me with Mike and Blaine, right? We're on our own out here, right? We're not clustered up. We're not part of anything else. It's just us, two guys drinking beer, talking about business and BS. So if you want, follow us, subscribe to our stuff, go to mikeandblaine.com and buy some beer. You can't be the first anymore. That's something that's been taken from you forever. you can't be the first, but you can be the next. You can be the next.
You can be the next. You can't be the first, second, third, fourth, but you can be the next that can buy us a beer. And you can also buy merch. So if you want to buy some merch, but check us out. We got all our,
That's my next goal, is to have somebody buy one of the shirts.
Yes. Yeah. Besides me and you, but
we buy shirts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, but check us out, mikeandblaine.com. You can see all of our episodes there. Of course, we're also, nobody told me, we're also on kind of everything. We're on Spotify and Google and Apple Podcasts and YouTube, and like, we're all over the place. So you can find us there. And check out our other episodes, because we're at 47. That means 46 episodes and 90 some beer before this episode, 90 some different breweries. It's not just 90 some beer. We have been, looking long and hard to get different breweries. And I was the only one that kind of screwed up and used the same brewery twice in 1 year to the next. But we're working hard to promote different breweries every time.
Yeah. All right. And last thing, let's tease a concept, right? Tease a concept of what we're doing. So we stumbled upon something and Blaine brought it up right after the podcast recording for episode 46. So if you haven't heard that yet, well, it's not even published yet, is it, at the time of this recording?
No, well, actually, I think it went up. No, it goes up next week, or did it just go up now? I can't remember. Okay. Next week. Okay.
We stumbled upon something. So if you've seen it live, you know what to look for in episode 46. But we came up with a concept where we take a saying, something that something that people's quoted or otherwise, and we break it down. What does it really mean? How does it impact you? So we're going to start doing that as part of our show on a regular basis. And I'm excited to do that. And welcome the dog back.
And the dog, he just came back. It was so funny that as soon as you kind of said, should I do it? Dead silence. I think he heard you and went, no, I'm not going to get in trouble. So if you guys have any business quotes, like we've got a ton, we got 100 and some we've kind of compiled here that are just great quotes that relate to business. If you've got a good quote that you think is really cool, just comment on it, or go to our website. You can message us in there, do whatever, get that over to us and we'll add it to the list and buy us a beer, especially if you own a brewery. We'll feature you if you buy us a beer.
There you go. Hey, Blaine, another good one, buddy, in the books, and we'll talk to you next week.
48 next week. Thanks, Mike.